I got to my phone just in time. Trying to unlock it with wet fingers wasn't the most pleasant thing to do, and I did it before it went off. Sorry, honey, I was in the shower. I'm all slippery and wet. Damn, I thought you were saving yourself for me when I got home tomorrow night. Who made you so slippery and wet for a millisecond? My pulse jumped before his mouth quickly turned into a beautiful smile that told me he loved me stupidly. I was in the shower. You called 5 minutes early. I'm still soapy and have conditioner in my hair. He let out his sexy chuckle, his teeth flashing white as he slowly shook his head. We have a little problem, so everyone's busy on the platform. I need to fill in, so I'll call earlier. His smile faded. Why did he pause in his sentence? That alarmed me. He regained his composure and his smile returned, at least partially. I suddenly wondered if he saw something here that might give it away. Jimmy, are you okay? You look like you've had a sudden realization. I'm sorry, Jade. Something important has come up. I have to go, weather permitting. The helicopter should be here tomorrow morning. It's like these 3 weeks are getting longer, and the 2 weeks you'll be home seem short. I want you back in our bed so badly. Just tell Jade, and I'll drop everything. Money doesn't matter, but we do. I've been saying this for 5 years. If you want me to get a job on land, and not on those gas rigs in the North Sea, don't be afraid to ask for what you want. This job means a lot to you, and the money is good. I love you, Jimmy, and I promise we'll make up for 3 weeks of missed fun. I love you, Jimmy. I'm serious, Jade. I'd rather get a job at the grocery store than lose what we have. I loved you, Jade. I'm sorry I have to go. I felt uncomfortable, like he'd said he loved me rather than I loved him. I must be getting paranoid, but something was bothering him. Like something had happened during the video call that made him change. I looked around. There was nothing to get me away. I'd been so careful to cover my tracks and make sure everything looked normal. My special time was carefully planned so as not to arouse suspicion. On Friday nights, I would go out with the girls and be a model wife, never dancing with any of the men who were always hitting on us at the club. I'd get back in a cab with Jimmy's sister Beth, who'd drop me off first, and then I'd ring the doorbell, knowing that his security camera would signal him that I was home. I'd get up, throw my coat off my shoulders, and kiss him on the doorbell camera, knowing he'd watch it later. I had never given him, or anyone else, the slightest reason to doubt that I was anything but a faithful wife who spent one evening a week with her girlfriends while my husband traveled. The perils of the North Sea to maintain our fantasy life. I removed a new set of electric-colored underwear from a hook on the bedroom door. Still in its packaging, it was attached to a cardboard two-dimensional detail of a torso, so as to show how it was all attached to each other, full of different clamps. It essentially formed a harness, add to that pale blue stockings and a thong to match, and I could see that I was sexy as hell. I shuddered at the thought of having to show it to Dan, and up close and personal. Our dates were quick and lusty, with no foreplay, dinners, dances, or the subtleties of seduction that are part of a typical relationship. If you think of my marriage to Jimmy as typical, it had been the same for the past 18 months. Jimmy would go to work on Fridays. I would pack and drive to the club at least an hour before the other girls. As soon as the cab dropped me off at the club, I would enter through the back service entrance. My body knew what to expect, and my skimpy underwear was always damp and sticky. Before I reached Dan's office, I'd go in, close the door, and Dan would relieve me of everything I was wearing. He insisted that I wear at least some underwear, and over the course of our dates my collection had grown considerably, so much so that I had to box up most of it and hide it in the depths of our large mirrored built-in closet. Dan would get up and walk around me, devouring me with his eyes, with the look of a hungry wolf at 59, 175 centimeters in heels, possessing what Jimmy said was a perfect body and gorgeous long red hair. I knew I had it. Dan wanted it, and he took it. There was no love in it, just a release for both of us. He told me how dirty I was. All the humiliation and insults only increased my sexual pleasure and release each time he came, and this happened more than once during our brief encounters. As soon as he was done, I would go to the bathroom to clean up, change into fresh, normal underwear, stuff the soiled underwear into my purse, and then go out the back door and to the front of the club to join my not-so-bright friends, including my sister-in-law. They all thought I had just arrived, not realizing I had been on top of them for at least an hour, trading my body and soul for narcotic pleasure. Everything repeated itself in the same format as every Friday night. Some wine, a few cocktails, lots of conversation, laughter. We danced together, and some danced with random male partners, but not with me. I always said no, and when they were a little more persistent, I would raise my hand and shake my wedding ring. But that was secondary. Dan had told me in the beginning that if I danced with another man in the club just once, I could forget about coming to his club. I needed the sensations he was giving me, something I couldn't and wouldn't ask my husband for, so I tried to honor his request. After a fun night, I drove home with Beth, my sister-in-law, and we giggled and chatted. After she dropped me off, I walked up to the driveway and rang the doorbell, looking up at him. I leaned forward and kissed the air as sexily as I could, telling Jimmy I missed him before opening the door and walking in sometime during the night. He saw this and sent me a little emoji kiss on WhatsApp in return. When I woke up in the morning, I saw that he had written me a message, but it wasn't quite what I expected. It just said that there was a problem, and he was running late, but he would be home on Monday. I started to worry. Did he really know something, but how? He had never been to the club, so there was no way he could have set up a camera there. Dan advised me to always linger and look in my purse for a few minutes before entering the club, but to look around. Did the car pull into the parking lot after the taxi? Are there no cars in the parking lot from which someone is watching me? If for some reason I thought I was being followed, I had to enter the club through the front door. Of course, I didn't miss anything and chalked it up to a malfunction in the rig. It had happened before, but I felt uneasy. Saturday morning I washed new underwear, because anything I wore for Dan was guaranteed to be stained. The night before Dan had me in the middle of the morning at the end of our game, I got a text from Beth on my phone. Jimmy had texted her that he wasn't going to make it back in time and asked if she would take me shopping on Sunday. Her husband Stan was playing golf that day, so we took the train to London and did just that. I was excited that he was due home the following evening, but saddened when I got a text message in the middle of the day saying he wouldn't be home until Tuesday. There were no emoticons in the message, just text, which was uncharacteristic of our communication these days. I immediately replied with a sad face, a kiss, and a couple of hearts and waited. Nothing came back. I called him, but the call went straight to voicemail. A few minutes later, Beth's phone beeped to let me know that a message had arrived, and when she read it, I was sure her eyes rolled, and she looked at me for a moment before she typed a reply and put the phone back in her purse. She looked up at me and smiled, but somehow not in the same way. They can't know. I'm covering my tracks, and the evidence just isn't there. But I still felt uneasy. I asked her, "Is there something important?" She literally looked me right in the eye. It was Stan. Apparently, one of his friends had just found out that his wife was cheating on him. I felt my heart jump in my throat. She seemed to be looking right into my soul. "Oh, that's terrible. Do we know her?" She still looked into my soul and answered, "Yes, we both know him, but not her. She's a stranger to us." I felt uncomfortable. I wanted to ask her something else, but I thought it would be better to keep quiet. On Monday and Tuesday, I cleaned the house again. My new dirty laundry was now clean and dry and joined the large collection I had accumulated over the past 18 months. I began to think that it would be wise to sort through it and get rid of some of it, but the idea hurt me because it wasn't all cheap and it wasn't meant for my husband. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe I should start using some of it when he gets home. He said he should be home around 4:30, so I went to the gym at 12 o'clock to try to calm my mind before he got there after the first time I slept with Dan. I was sure I had the word guilty tattooed on my face, even though I was trying very hard to act natural when Jimmy got home, but Jimmy didn't say anything. This tattoo of my shameful act was just not visible to him. After realizing this, I realized that I would be safe if I followed simple rules. Act normal. Don't try to compensate. Don't say no to my husband. And my affair only happened in Dan's office during those girls' nights out. When I returned from the gym, I was shocked. Jimmy had already returned and was sitting on the terrace looking across the garden to Conbrough Castle. In the distance, I walked to the side to listen to the slight rustling of the trees and the birds singing. Jimmy was sitting there, not getting up to hug me, just turning his face to me with a blank expression and staring at the garden again. I felt my heart beat faster and a terrible knot formed in my stomach. "How long, Jade?" I hadn't expected such a question and tried to think quickly. There was nothing that could give me away or have a rational explanation. "Jimmy, what are you saying? What do you mean, I'm having an affair?" He turned and looked at me, his face expressionless. I'd seen it before, when we sometimes got together with friends and family for an evening, the guys playing poker and us girls drinking and chatting. I stared at his best poker face. The silence continued, and I felt a tear roll down my cheek. "Jimmy, I didn't do anything." He stood up and picked up a box I hadn't noticed beside him and dumped its contents on the table. 18 months of worn underwear lay in a pile. He sat back down, turned around and looked at me with a blank face. I wanted to curse, but that would have given me away his game. Put 2 and 2 together and you get 5. I missed you. It's not what it looks like. I get lonely when you're not around. So I started buying lingerie, and I liked to look at myself in the mirror. I wanted to make sure that I still looked sexy. Wanted me. I was embarrassed by how much I bought, so I put it in a box in my closet. I thought you'd be mad at me for spending so much money, but you're wrong, Jade. I don't care how much you spent to show me how beautiful you are, but I'm not the one who's benefiting from what I now consider to be a tasteless pile of junk you've soiled. He lowered himself into a large brown manila envelope. It had a small bulge, which meant it wasn't empty. He placed it in front of him, then looked up at me with the same face and said nothing. I looked at the envelope and was gripped with fear. What had he received and how did he know? I needed a clue to at least try to limit the possible damage. His sister's comment about her husband's girlfriend led me to believe she was referring to my marriage when she said, "We didn't know this woman." She was referring to the other me, the one who had broken her wedding vows. I was in trouble. "What's in the envelope?" "Honey, the truth, Jade, just the truth." "Then you need to show me what's inside." "I have nothing to hide." "If you think I've done something wrong, something that's come between us, you're wrong. It's going to be a simple misunderstanding, trust me." He leaned over the table and started going through the things scattered on it, like he was putting on a little show. Then he found the blue underwear I'd worn on Friday. Did he like seeing you in them? On Friday, I jumped up from my chair, leaned over the railing that separated the terrace from the garden, and breathed dry for a few moments, shaking violently, tears streaming from my eyes. I racked my brain, wondering how he could have known, as I stood there thinking frantically. His voice brought me back to that moment and said 3 words that no partner in a relationship wants to hear. We need to talk. I looked at him, and he nodded toward the chair across from me. I sat down and studied his face.